Chapter 23. Another Midlife Crisis. When things didn't go quite the way I hoped they would with my booklet, I began to question my abilities as a teacher, a writer, and the whole notion of trying to change the world spiritually. My online chat room was all but dead. About 1 out of every 12 people who came into my chat room were actually interested in knowing about God. The other 11 were people who were either looking to debate the reality of God or they wanted to discuss religion and theology, which I knew next to nothing about. After my earlier experiences online, I had no interest in engaging in such conversations. I always been there to assist the seeker, but at this point, there just didn't seem to be many people looking. When none of my spiritual endeavors reached the heights I thought they would, I found myself on the verge of another midlife crisis, only this time it wouldn't be health-related. This crisis had everything to do with what kind of work I would be doing for the rest of my life. Being a delivery boy was great in many respects. It was a low-stress, low-impact job that gave me ample time for thinking and introspection. I could stay in touch with news and world events via radio programs on the many news stations. I had the freedom to do small errands or get a bite to eat. I also did most of my spiritual writing and thinking while driving. But more than anything, it got me out to where I met many great people who I would develop meaningful relationships with. And it was where I could put my now more mature spirituality in motion. But at the end of the day, it still wasn't the work that I was most passionate about. I knew I had more to offer than delivering automotive parts and fast food. The question was what? I began considering something I never dreamed I would do again: going back to school. The thought of returning to school was indeed a scary one, but also an exciting one. First and foremost, I had the massive responsibility of supporting my family, who needed shelter, food, clothing, heat, transportation, health care, and everything else that goes along with it. Where would I find the time? Secondly, I had never really been the academic type. I always preferred learning something via the experience of doing it, and on my own terms. And lastly, what would I go to school for? After the work I'd done helping people spiritually, and after experiencing how gratifying it could be, I decided that I wanted to help people, but on a personal, intimate level. Perhaps counsel people in a way that was similar to what I had been doing with folks online. Psychology seemed to be the obvious choice, and besides, I had taken a psych class in technical college and was fascinated by it, getting an A with hardly any effort. With this in mind, I paid a visit to a local college and spoke at length with one of the guidance counselors about what I wanted to become and what it would take to get there. I left the school feeling really enthusiastic and at the same time overwhelmed. The amount of time and effort it would take to reinvent myself and get my degree would be significant. And it would certainly take away from the already limited time I got to spend with my wife and 2 daughters. After spending the next few months weighing all these factors, I decided rather than taking the time, energy, and financial resources it would require to earn a degree in psychology, I would rededicate myself to my true passion, helping people understand, find, and experience God. Chapter 24. If 10 times you don't succeed, try again. With the idea of going back to school firmly in my rearview mirror, I redirected my energies on new ways of getting my teachings out into the mainstream. My first order of business would be to rewrite and retitle my booklet, which I was never completely satisfied with. After some serious thought, I discovered I had a lot more truths to express, truths that could be injected into a new composition. That fall of 2005, I had my new booklet, and with it set out to distribute them in area shops that seemed appropriate for the kind of work I intended to do spiritually. This time, however, I would paperclip a business card to my booklets that contained my contact information. This way, people who wanted more information could contact me for live personal support. I also found myself returning to my online chat room, the same room I opened almost 5 years before. I had come full circle. On January 9th, 2006, I placed a phone call to an independent publishing company to ask about getting my most recent booklet published. While the gentleman on the line explained to me that this was certainly possible, he suggested what I might want to do is expand on what I had already written and turn my small composition into an actual book. While that thought had crossed my mind in the past, I never took it that seriously for one simple reason: I am not a writer. My 12-page, now 19-page booklet was a real struggle for me that took years to get right, so just the thought of writing a real book was a daunting one. But for all its shortcomings, the booklet was a noble idea, and one that was worth rewriting and polishing into a book. With an actual book, I could give people a much more meat and potatoes, in-depth, inside look at what a working relationship with God is like, what it can provide, and how it relates to the human experience, based on my then 23 years of knowing God. I could also try to answer more questions that seekers might have about God and true spirituality. I could not only raise the bar regarding the definition of God and clarify the many misconceptions about God, but also up the ante in regards to personal spiritual enlightenment and the discovery of God. It could also be an alternative pathway for people who had given up on traditional religious teachings and serve as a beacon of truth for the hungry seeker in his or her quest to once again understand, find, and know God. Everyone thinks about God at some point and to some degree, and most people wonder about who they are, where they came from, and where they're going. And with a subject that is universal, and a being who is perfect, permanent, and absolute, and with an audience that consists of all people, how could I go wrong? Furthermore, with me working so much and time being at a premium, I found myself having less time to devote to people in need. Any kind of serious discussion about God could take between 2 to 3 hours, if not more. One of the great things about a book is that the author can be in a million different places at the same time. So in essence, where this book goes, I go. Where this book is, I am. I began working on this book shortly after my phone call with the publishing company. The following would be the guiding principles for this book as well as my life. Always be respectful and open-minded when it comes to people's religious beliefs and spiritual pathways. Be honest and accurate about yourself, your life, and what you know about God Himself. Write and speak straight from your soul. Always keep the spotlight of spirituality pointed squarely on God Himself where it should be, with the spiritual endgame being to help the reader to find and experience God on a personal level. Now all I needed was a title. After considering new titles such as 60 Seconds with God, Box of Light, What's Been Missing, with a period and not a question mark, and Alone in a Room with God, I finally settled on the title of my most recent composition, The God Experience. First, because nothing says as much about something, or in this case someone, than one's own experience. And secondly, it's essentially a book about God, the mountaintop of spirituality, the bullseye on the spiritual dartboard, the first source and center, the highest, most perfect one, none above, almighty creator of the universe, and love supreme. To combine the two, you have the God experience. I have felt shaken at times and certainly defeated by all these failures as I try to share God's love and wisdom with others, but never completely broken down. And there have been times over the years when I considered giving up on trying to help people spiritually. But every time I thought about calling it quits, something would happen in my life that would challenge me. And as always, I would lean on God for internal support, guidance, and fortification. And without fail, God would always come through for me and I would think, there's no way I can give up on this work. This truth about God is simply too important, too valuable, too immense for me to keep hidden away within myself. He is, once again, the cure, the remedy, the answer, and the solution. Chapter 25. Family will always be my highest priority. It is 8:28 Sunday morning, April 2nd, 2006, and my wife and 2 children just left for church. You might be wondering why I'm not with them. For me, the entire world is my church, and everyone in this world is my congregation. Besides, prayer and worship has always been something that I prefer to do in private. At this point in my life, things are going well. My marriage is better than ever, and my wife has made great strides with her depression. She works very hard homeschooling our kids, keeping our home in order, and bettering herself from within. My daughters, now 6 and 9, are healthy and steadily growing, with my oldest being seizure-free for over 5 years now. They will always be my highest priority, and I love them both more than anyone in this world. I still struggle to keep my composure with them, mostly when they are just being kids. It isn't very fair for me to get angry with them for just acting silly, but I'm working on it. I still find time to play jazz with the same group of guys from 1997, and we even get paid for it once in a great while. When I'm not delivering fast food or automotive supplies or spending time with my family, I like to spend time buying records, listening to music, reading, watching sports on TV, motorcycling, fishing with my friends, and of course working with people spiritually, which is ultimately why I wrote this book. So through all the ups and downs, hardships and struggles, I will continue to live, work, grow, and give to others. Chapter 26. Life is full of revisions. My book was published in 2006, and although I was proud of my accomplishment, I still found myself reticent to share this news with everyone. Deep down, I knew it just wasn't complete. Still, I gave many copies away and sold a handful. I sent a bunch of books to reviewers from around the country, hoping some of them would find it valuable and worthy of endorsing. Looking back, the book was good, but not great. I wrote the first 2 parts, My Life Story, in 3 weeks. Part 3, Teachings, was basically the same text that made up my 19-page booklet. I simply joined the 2 parts together. It was sparse, incomplete, and certainly rushed, and at 92 pages, wasn't exactly War and Peace. But its intent was, and still is today, to prevent war and promote peace. Still, it was not the epic, earth-shaking, world-changing piece of written work that I hoped it would be, which is what prompted me in February of 2012 to revise and essentially rewrite the first edition of this book in an effort to give it the weight, width, and depth that it so desperately needed and that the first edition so sorely lacked. Its goal now is the same as it ever was, to serve as the bridge or catalyst that takes you, the reader, all the way to the experience of God Himself. If it can do that, then it has served its purpose, and I have done my job as a teacher. I hope you will be one of those people. Ever since the day I found God, I've been dreaming of ways to share that discovery with others. It's been a rather long road in trying to make this dream a reality. It started with a business card 14 years ago, and then there was a pamphlet followed by a web page. An online chat room became a book. When the book wasn't a success, I tried an online radio program. When that flopped, I created a children's book that never really got off the ground. As you have read so far, my spiritual work has been a series of attempts and failures. My life, however, has not been, and I attribute that to having such a solid living support foundation both within and around me. It is this truth that keeps me coming back to the dream of changing the world via true spirituality. Regardless of the course this new book takes, I will always try in some capacity to help those who want to know about God, for it has become such a part of me. It is now in my blood forever, and I will do this work not for fame, fortune, glory, or recognition, but because spiritual truth, and love being at the center of it all, is simply too important and too meaningful not to be shared. Chapter 27: The Value of Going to Church. It is November 24th, 2013, and I just got home from church with my wife and 2 children. I started attending church about 2.5 years ago for the purpose of family unity. I still prefer to pray and worship privately, simply because I can connect in a greater way with God when we are alone together, in the same way that my wife and I can when it's just the 2 of us. And I've never felt the need for a mediator or go-between spiritually, for I have always worked directly with God. That's not to say that group prayer and group worship doesn't work for people. It obviously does and has for millions of folks all over this world for thousands of years. Church does a great many things for many people, and I would have to be blind not to see that. I see it most every Sunday. Church can provide immediate goods and services, as well as emotional support for those in need of strength and fortification. And it is chock full of good people who are outwardly passionate about and inwardly conscious of God, which I find refreshing in today's world. But most importantly, it provides love, support, friendship, and community in the form of positive living relationships, which is and will always be the most important truth in the universe. Epilogue. My marriage to Catherine is even stronger than it was 7.5 years ago when I composed the first epilogue for this book, and it will be stronger 7.5 years from now than it is today. That's what true love does. It grows. My wife works hard every day educating our children, keeping them safe, maintaining our home, and once again, bettering her soul from within, evidenced by the way she sees and treats other people. She is also the most moral, ethical, and unselfish person I have ever known. The woman truly has a heart of gold. My daughters, now 17 and 14, have become wonderful young adults. My greatest wish and prayer for both of them is that someday they will find partners who are equally as wonderful. They will always be my highest priority, and I love them both immensely. I still find time to play music, although not as much as I would like to. Everyone is so darn busy. When I'm not delivering fast food or automotive supplies or spending time with my wife and children, I still like to spend time listening to music, collecting vinyl records, watching movies, reading, following Boston sports, motorcycling, hiking, biking, and spending quality time with friends and family. When I get the now rare opportunity, I still work with people spiritually. Perhaps with this new book, those opportunities to work with people won't be so rare. I'm looking forward to what the future has in store for me. No doubt it will be challenging. It's supposed to be because that's how we grow spiritually. With all the love and support I have in my life, both within and around me, I'm sure it will be positive, productive, and ultimately rewarding.